Hi, I'm Dr. Gilgamesh, and I'd like to introduce you to my podcast, Emotional Anatomy. It's an intelligently designed anatomy that has as its goal the recruiting your interest and curiosity as to how it works so that you can become more familiar with it and, as a result, better at it and enjoy it more. Welcome. Hello there, it's Dr. Gilgamesh again. You know, I'm excited to be able to offer the world, if you will, to offer to you a new vocabulary, one that actually looks into the mind and sees how it works. I cannot tell you how to think. I'm going to be helping you see how you think. And that freedom versus slavery summarizes that experience. We are creatures of habit. We are creatures of the mind, and the mind has reflexes, much like the physical body has reflexes. The mind is subject to reflexes that force it into behavior over which we have no control. Now, the beauty of freedom versus slavery is to assist each of us in recognizing how to identify the areas of habit and pattern and sequence that keeps us confined. So I think it's useful, very practical, to turn now to the video game phenomena. And we find, say, in the young person, a sense of being bored and seeking entertainment or escape, and that because life has not offered them anything better, the new movie is not available, the mind is not stimulated, curiosity has not been triggered, the healthy emotions are not understood, emotional anatomy is ignored, and the adult population says to the kids, do this or do that, instead of describing how we have confronted our emotional anatomy and dealt with our own difficulties more and more effectively by recognizing how it works, by recognizing that the addiction, if you will, is to a belief system that we have not yet overcome. It's as though my intellect can solve the riddle of my thoughts, my emotion, my behaviors. It's as though we turn to the mind and try to convince it that it's so smart that it ought to be able to figure itself out, instead of understanding that the mind is designed this way on purpose to impress you so that you would make the free choice to turn back to principles that you discover are really quite useful to you, to assist you in navigating the emotional anatomy and walking up to the video gamer and discovering that they're bored stiff. Perhaps we could offer them something more exciting. Perhaps we could live lives that were more exciting. Perhaps we could offer them curiosity and fascination and stimulate them. That's why I'm talking to the physicians first, the teachers also, because we need to reach the kids so that the kids will go home and reach their parents with a new model, a new way of looking at the mind, a recognition of emotional anatomy that is in tug of war with some very specific challenges, important and valuable to the future of the world. That's you, because the choices you make a difference. Freedom versus slavery, the choices you make a difference, and how you describe this phenomena to your neighbor makes a difference. The vocabulary that you use makes a difference as well. So we're attempting to recruit you We're recruiting your interests, your curiosity in looking at the mind from a new perspective, through a new lens, through a perspective that can only be discovered via your emotional anatomy, not through your intellect. Although I appeal to your intellect to understand and develop the vocabulary that helps you then navigate the emotional anatomy. And it does require an intellectual vocabulary to identify and label the anatomical parts, if you will, such as loneliness. And so I solve my loneliness, what? By chasing relationships that may or may not be productive for me. But take a look at boredom as an example, and the turning to the video game, and then the self-talk that comes out of that. The young man who would be critical of himself, I'm so lazy, I don't want to do anything, but yet what would I do? I don't know of anything that's exciting. And so we might say, try to teach him to dream, or demonstrate the dream, or help him to understand how challenging it was for us to generate the dream, or how many dreams we had to go through before any dream made enough sense to move us in passion into mobilizing our energies and experiencing the strength to face the impossible. That strength that comes upon us because it's available by our own free choice. It's not something that we had to make up. It's not something for which we had to lift weights. It's not something we had to in any way talk ourselves into. It became our freedom to choose, and understanding the principle, freedom versus slavery. The young man stuck on the video game, for instance, calling himself lazy, only to discover, wait a second, this is not laziness. This is spending 120 hours every 2 weeks on video games, a 60-hour week, week after week after week. That's not lazy. That's a focus of attention upon getting very good at what you're doing. Now the question is what would you like to do? And how can we motivate and encourage and find, coming out of the heart, a real enthusiasm? Disney does this very nicely. It creates movies that motivate our dreaming, right? To invite us beyond the reef. And that's appropriate. We need to be invited beyond the reef. We need our imaginations to come alive, wondering, what's it all about? It's about discovering meaning and purpose. It's discovering about personal significance, the important and valuable to the future of the world. We need you now more than ever. We want to recognize that the mind comes alive because all of us participate in this conversation. It's not just me. I am attempting to persuade you, certainly. I believe that we're on to an understanding that it is through emotional anatomy that I feel lazy. I recognize the concept of lazy. I recognize the feeling of lazy. I hear the voice accusing me of lazy, but yet flip the coin. I'm spending 60 hours a week. I work harder than my own parents at my job of performing well at the video game. Now, what would you like to do? What next would you like to do? I would like to introduce you to freedom versus slavery. I'd like to introduce you to the war. I'd like to introduce you to the battle for controlling your thoughts with lazy, calling you names, putting you down, versus excited. Let's sit down and see the performance. Oh my goodness, you're at the top of the list for all the players that have ever confronted this game. How remarkable. How wonderful, how encouraging it is to see performance at that level. Now, that kind of intelligence can be applied elsewhere. Oh, I went and tried to get good grades. I got A's. It was easy. I got bored. It was so easy because what? The teachers have downgraded their expectations of students. They haven't been able to identify the students that are exceptional. They've lost their own enthusiasm, perhaps. They're trapped inside themselves, having lost the passion that brought them into the teaching in the beginning. And that passion coming out of your heart is what makes humans special, is what liberates the human. I've said this before, but it's important to realize here that in the United States of America, freedom is the cornerstone of our heritage. We receive that concept from forefathers, all right, from Greeks as well. And we've tried to translate that into a political system that has now been so corrupted that the political system is no longer free. It is slave to itself. It's slave to its own bureaucracy. It's slave to its own legislation. It's slave to its habits and patterns. I believe that it's going to be far easier for the Chinese or the Russians to implement an understanding of this emotional anatomy and how the mind works, to implement that into their own educational systems far before the United States ever catches on. You see, because we're going to be stuck trying to persuade so many people to be able to see the value of this undertaking. It's easy, by the way, to approach the video gamer and help see the tug of war and flip the coin and say, this is not laziness. This is passion applied to excel at the game. And now, may I assist you in seeing that a new movie can unfold when you look at it through the lens of awe and wonder. Can I introduce you to the lens of awe and wonder? Can I capture your curiosity, fascination, and excitement by reminding you that gratitude guides you to the lens of awe and wonder? These are ideas that we're developing together through a vocabulary that is boringly repetitious, perhaps, or is it triggering your curiosity? I hope so. It is a curiosity that would then allow you to see that the straight A's, although boring for the excellent student, demands that we challenge them for more and find new and exciting ways, creative ways to reach out to humanity and get them excited about new learning instead of what, bureaucratically assigned goals and achievements. I think that it's important to remember uniqueness. You are unique in all the world. Thumbprint uniqueness. You're a human, and you have human characteristics, and you operate according to principles that govern the human condition, but unique in all the world nonetheless. And as a result of that, it is challenging to then invite you into that unique expression, to liberate your ability to see clearly and choose wisely amongst the options available to you, so that you might be able to then experience the joy of your liberation, the excitement of your liberation, the true pleasure of giving your all. Oh, you've already got that in the video game, you see, and it's becoming boring because you've risen to the top of the game market that you're playing. I'm not being critical of you. I'm suggesting take a look inside the heart and find the next challenge and the next challenge. But remember, you rose to the top of the last challenge, and now it's time to take on the next. But first, you're going to have to figure out what it is that you would truly like to do. And of interest, that means standing back as the observer and discovering this lens of awe and wonder. This lens of awe and wonder that sees the tug of war that's fighting against the realization of your personal significance, that's fighting against the realization of how important and valuable you are to the future of the world, that's fighting back against any concept of unique, valuable personal significance. It's interesting, but that the self-talk the observer gets to see streaming through his mind, his or her mind, is allowed to then be challenged. Lazy? Not at all. 60 hours a week, 120 hours every 2 weeks. My goodness gracious, the gaming is a passionate industry. And the older people are investing in it because they realize how capturing it is. But consider here, where is the movie that will liberate? The movie that liberates is in imagination, and it comes out of the heart home. And through that heart home, this lens of awe and wonder opens, and you can begin catching glimpses of movies. You take your average, say, 15-minute gaming. Goodness gracious. Gaming nowadays comes across at 60 frames per second. Movies, 24 frames per second. In my day, they were 16 frames per second. But a picture being worth 1,000 words, and multiply that out, you have many millions of words. You have over 7 million words in just a few minutes of imagination. Because if we're seeing our lives as movies, then may I excite you by recognizing the invitation to write an extraordinary movie. And that extraordinary movie then meets opposition. This is the Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader story. And Lucas got it right. Lucas allowed us to see a visual representation of what now you are privileged to experience inside your mind. That as you fight for your new movie, as you fight for the liberation of your passion, you are seeing this lightsaber battle against thoughts that would try to persuade you that you're lazy or no good or rotten or missed the boat or can't do it or that there's something the matter with you, rather than that you've taken a pathway down the video game path, and that you've got a lot of adults that are screaming at you instead of encouraging you. Come alive. Let the movie blossom. But it requires freedom instead of slavery. And that slavery is achieved through fighting back. A simple no to thoughts that would try to tear you down. A simple yes to thoughts that lead you forward. This battle is in everyone. This battle is universal to mankind. This battle is within the emotional anatomy. So familiarity with the emotional anatomy is what I'm talking about, a vocabulary that allows you to recognize that you're not alone. You and all of us are involved. The writers of Wonder Woman got it right. We are all responsible. Let us accept that responsibility and now go forward, identifying the emotional reflexes that get in the way of allowing your movie to come forward. To actually recognize that there is emotion, there's mood, attitude, there's vision, there's memory, there's thoughts, et cetera, that would try to prevent you. There's guilt, there's anger, there's frustration, there's embarrassment and shame and loneliness. And all of these emotions are part of your emotional anatomy. They're perfectly normal. And everyone has to deal with them. But next time you approach your teenager, or if you are a teenager, next time you approach yourself, recognize that the goal here is to talk about how I dealt with that emotion when it was my turn. Loneliness. Have you ever had that funky feeling of I'm so lonely, I got to call somebody? Oh, don't call that person. The last time you called it was such a nightmare. Oh my goodness, I don't want to talk to them ever again. It was a horrible nightmare. Just a second, and dial the phone. Hi, how are you? Can we get together? because the loneliness has been driving you into decisions that may be counterproductive. But if once you're aware of the loneliness, thank you, because the mind is beginning to recognize how it works, no longer, hopefully, being told by others how you should work. The shoulds, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, all these things are self-talk, but they're also coming from outside of you. Most parents don't know anything about this, so they'll tell you what to do. They'll say, you should do that. Do that. No, don't do that. Do this. Don't do that. Instead of explaining, yes, when I was young, I grabbed that cord and it shocked me. And boy, I never grabbed that cord again. And I hope I can help you miss out on that opportunity because it hurt me. But in the meantime, right, it's those two little plugs that can shock you badly. And I'm going to try and help you learn how to watch the emotional anatomy that through urges and impulses over which you have no control, you make mistakes. Yeah, surprise. And instead of being punished for them, let us use them as learning opportunities. Please teach me, what was it that happened to you just then? And to be able to recognize that it is simply helping one another to realize the power of emotion to force behavior, that we then start to advance, because I can teach you about those emotions that have forced my behaviors counterproductively, but I cannot tell you to stop responding to those emotions that are forcing your behavior counterproductively. You see, that doesn't work. Stop that doesn't work. If I can help you, on the other hand, recognize freedom versus slavery, now choose, which will you prefer? 99% of the people I speak with say freedom. So then I have the opportunity to help them recognize the powerful emotions that force their behaviors. Please label them. Please give them names. Please join us online and start interacting with us to shape this vocabulary so that the kids will get it. The teachers, oh yes, I'm attempting as best that I can to offer physicians a very simplified language. Freedom to choose wisely, important and valuable to the future of the world. The choices you make a difference. And that as a result of your understanding, become curious and recognize where these impulses of emotion carry you out of control. Come in, let's talk about it and deal responsibly. We are all responsible for understanding ourselves in the emotional mirror. Flying lessons? Ah, yes, imagination comes alive. For we are flying through the emotional anatomy, swimming through the ocean of emotion, recognizing the variety of experience that happens to us all. And we're beginning to share with one another how to talk about it so that we're not offensive to each other and not triggering emotions in the other. Oh, my kids roll their eyes at me. I trigger their emotions. I'm sure sometimes you roll your eyes at me too because I'm boringly repetitious, but I do hope that I'm triggering your curiosity at the same time. It's exciting to be able to present to you a new paradigm, a paradigm shift in the way we look into this emotional mirror and recognize ourselves compassionately. These are reflexes, oftentimes out of control, until we understand freedom versus slavery. Until next time, thanks for listening. You know, I'm really excited about presenting these materials. This is a description of how the mind works. It is going to revolutionize the way we think about psychological science, freedom versus slavery. Gratitude guides your heart home where you discover the lens of awe and wonder, and through it realize wisdom. Freedom to choose wisely for the future of the world. So, if you're enjoying these podcasts, I do them for free, and you've been watching them, I hope, several times. But please donate and support the show if you're so moved. You can do so at patreon.com/emotional anatomy. And you can join us on our Facebook group also, and get a little more intimate in the discussion of this vocabulary. Thank you.